Jim. There we go. Hi, everybody. Our next presenter, do I call you Fryer or just call you
Jim?
Okay. This is Jim Eichner. He's from Foodbank Farm in Snohomish. He's amazing. His work is a really beautiful example of what happens when farming and cleaning and hunger relief all come together for partnerships, the logistics, everything. So please welcome Jim
Eichner.
Eichner.
Thank you. Thanks to Megan, she's in a conference in the room next door, and HopeLink for sponsoring this local gleaning conference, and also for Harvest Against Hunger. Thank you, David, for hosting. Sure. Yeah. So I'm glad I'm not a unicorn. There's a whole room full of unicorns here who all think that this is a cool thing to do. I started gleaning well, actually, I've been around food banks for a long time. When I was a starving college student, maybe some of you visited a food bank, and you noticed I noticed in the food banks it was all grocery rescue back in those days, and the things they had in the food banks were meat, things that could be frozen, dairy could get frozen, shelf-stable things, canned things. But the last thing they would, or the least thing they would have, would be fresh produce. Because think of it as you go through the grocery store, by the time a green pepper comes off the shelf in the grocery store, it's probably got a day or something left in it. So I noticed that, and once some years went by, I turned into a priest. I'm the second in command over there at Episcopal Church of the Holy Cross at the top of the hill. And I had a sabbatical one summer. So in 2009, I took a sabbatical, went to Jubilee Farm in Carnation. Everybody was sick of hearing me talk about growing up on a farm, and they said, you know what you should do for your sabbatical? You should farm. So I went to Jubilee. Eric Hackinson was very generous with his time and so forth. And he had 11 acres of produce growing there in a CSA, a very well-organized CSA with about 400 members. And I thought, oh, I see how this works. I mean, I had a vegetable garden growing up, and we had fields growing up, and it never occurred to me that you can have a field of vegetables and grow a lot of them. Thought fields were for corn. So, just small things like that. I came out of that and I said, I don't know what's going to happen next in my midlife crisis, but it's going to involve a tractor, and it's going to be this somehow. So I started working with Clean Greens Farm and Market. It was an outreach of New Hope Missionary Baptist Church in the Rainier Valley, and I met Tommy Willis through that. Tommy Willis is he's just an intuitive farmer, and so he's an amazing farmer. And he taught me. So I worked with him for a couple, 3 years out there as a volunteer, and he kind of taught me how to scale up from this garden plot to a field of vegetables. And then in 2012, I met Eric Fritsch at Chinook Farms in Snohomish. Eric's also an Episcopalian. He and a group of people from St. John's Church came to our church for a field trip, talking about vestries, which is like the governing board of the church. And I said, he mentioned that he had just bought a farm. He had bought a farm on the day that Lehman Brothers failed in 2008. So he made it go, and so we started renting some land at Chinook. By this time, the idea of food bank farm had matured a bit. None of what I'm doing is my own idea. Everything that's happened here is somebody else's idea that I've just ripped off. So there was a food bank farm up in Bellingham, at the Bellingham Food Bank. They did it for several years, and then they stopped doing it. And so I called Max up there. I said, hey, can I have your name? And he said, yeah, whatever. It's kind of a vague name. It's not like it needs to be trademarked or something. So I said, well, I'll start Food Bank Farm down here. And so we started with a few acres at Chinook Farms, and not knowing how much we could grow, I started renting 3 acres. Eric threw in another 3 acres. So there's a big sweetheart deal going on here. And by the end of the season, I think we had, between the acres that we grew and the acres that Bob's Corn, my neighbor there, offered, we ended up sending about almost 100,000 pounds of food into the food bank. The year before, we had gleaned through Clean Greens and another neighbor, we had gleaned 3,500 pounds of food. And I was like, okay, so put it into scale. You got the little food box collection thing in your church foyer or your school or something. Maybe in the course of a year, there's 1,000 pounds of stuff that comes through that. Now it is dense food. It's, shelf stable and everything, but still it's 1,000 pounds. Just going to our neighbor and working with Tommy, and this was above and beyond what he was already doing for their CSA. We got 3,500 pounds. I'm like, that's like a quantum leap of food. And a lot of it was really great fresh food. So then I started to get this idea. What if we could grow food that was something we could plan for? The previous speaker talked about planning ahead of time. And that it wouldn't be just a gleaning thing where, oh, hey, I've got a row of cabbages. If you come get them on Tuesday, you can have them. Otherwise, I'm going to plow. Well, who's going to have a crew ready to do that? I'm going to just take a break from that idea and just point out this picture. How many of you have seen this picture before in life? Yeah. I grew up with this as a child, a black and white version of it. And the Gleaners. And this is late 1800s French artist. I'm terrible with names. But I remember these people bowed over and picking things off the ground as a child. Like, what are those people and what are they doing? And my mom said, oh, they're the Gleaners. It's a famous painting. And I started wondering what gleaning was. Now I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and I learned at some point, or maybe I've picked up and read for myself, I think it's in Leviticus, where they say, when you're farming, you, Mr. Farmer, leave the edges of your fields for anybody that's in need in your town or area. And and remember that you guys were wandering and needed food yourselves. So anybody, the foreigners, everybody can glean the edges of the field. And I used to think, well, that's the leftovers for the people. And then I read the story in Ruth, which is a love story of a refugee named Ruth, who was from Moab, which sounds like a long ways away. It's maybe about 40 miles away. Anyway, and she and her mother-in-law left Moab because there was a drought, and came back to Israel. And there they found a field in what called a near kinsman. Well, this was somebody that Ruth could marry and would redeem the whole family from their terrible debt and everything that was going on. So it's a love story. But the guy's name was Boaz, and Boaz noticed Ruth in the field. She was exotic, and he said, you see that Moabite woman over there? And he's talking to his guys who are harvesting. He says, make sure you spill, she's gleaning, make sure you spill some grain when you walk by where she's gleaning. So she's got extras. She's a hard worker, and I want to make sure she goes home with a whole bushel of wheat. And so at that moment I realized, no, the gleaning happens exactly at the same time as the harvest. It's not an after thing. Like, okay, we're done doing our harvest now. All of you riffraff people can come in and get what you want. It's at the same time. It's like one big party that's happening in the field. So that was a big moment for me. So it's the same quality food. It's the same picked food. It's the top shelf. Exactly the same thing the farmer is growing for himself to make his profit. A lot of farmers know this image and know this story, even if they might not be able to quote that in scripture. And so I've had farmers say to me, well, look, I live in an age of industrial farming. My fields are nowhere near any village where anybody in need is going to, and plus, what are they going to go walk out and pick some barley and take it home and mill it themselves or something to feed themselves? So, but I want to participate in this. It's a script in a lot of farmers' minds. If only I could do that. Well, that's where I'm here to help. So I try to reach out to the farmers. I've been growing up on a farm. I talk farm, and I like farmers, and it's an easy thing for me. But farmers are eager to have somebody talk to them about a way that they can participate in help. Now, the previous speaker, the blueberry lady, was explaining some of the swirl of things that are going through a farmer's mind when you come up to them and say, oh, can we come and glean your blueberries? The whole calendar thing, the swing set thing, the trampoline thing, the parking thing, the party thing, who's going to pay for this? All of those things are swirling right through any farmer's calm demeanor while they're talking to you. They're just listening to you, and all this is swirling. Like, how in the world could this possibly work? So we talk about all of those kinds of things ahead of time to try and solve as many of these conundrums as we can. One of the first things that, even if you don't have a trampoline, things like that. By the way, this agritourism has all of these same issues going on. People on our property, oh, they're going to run over my flower bed, and so having grown up on farms and knowing how farmers think has informed me that they don't want somebody breaking their stuff. And like, they don't want somebody jumping up on a tractor and say, how fast can this thing go? Or something like that. They're very cautious about that, and they are super concerned about getting sued. They don't want anybody on their property that's going to sue them. So if we start, and then so they want someone coming in to glean to be aware of how to take care of their property and how to keep people out of, keep people off the equipment, keep people out of certain buildings and so forth. And also, don't trample my stuff. Here's the rose that you can pick, but don't pick this over here. This is going to be something else. So having these conversations with the farmers, having their fears addressed, worst case scenarios and so forth, and then assuring them, there's the Good Samaritan Act, which it's a real thing. Some people can't find it on the internet, but there is an actual federal law that says, look, if somebody's not doing it on purpose, then and something happens, they can't come after you for that. And then there's some signage you can put out and saying, you can be decapitated by working on a farm, so be careful, things like that. Farm equipment house has these little drawings on it of a little stick man, with his arm getting cut off. Well, that's right to the point. Anyway, this keep people away from all of the unsafe things. Then the farmer starts to open up, and what they'll do usually is give you a last chance. So the first time I might go into a farm will be, do you have any leftovers at the end of your season? So a lot of the people we work with are the pumpkin farmers with the agritourism. Well, they need to stay open until October 31st. Now, many years we had a hard frost by October 31st, but like the last 2 years, no. So, man, there were tons of pumpkins and winter squash laying in those fields. And so I try to do that sort of soft entry with them. Can we come in at the end of your season, after you've made all of your money, not the Boaz method here, but would you be willing for that? And of course they would. Oh, they're so out of gas by the end of the pumpkin season. They're just like, yeah, go over there and get anything you want. But what they don't want, I've said, well, why don't you just open up your fields to people coming in at the end of the season? And they, no, I want it to go through an organization, through a nonprofit, and to the food bank. Otherwise, I'll have all of these people just coming on the farm. For example, many people love pumpkin seeds at the end of the pumpkin season. And so the pumpkin farmers in the valley suddenly find on November 1st, a bunch of people just randomly going out into their pumpkin fields and chopping open pumpkins to get the seeds out. And I mean, they will like fill the bed of a pickup truck with pumpkin seeds. That's how many they want. And nobody's given anybody any permission for this. They've never asked the farmer and everything. It's just kind of like word of mouth happens. And then so all the farmers now, right after Halloween, they just get their disc out and they just chop all their pumpkins to smithereens. Chop them under so that they do, because of this attractive nuisance problem that they had. So these are the kinds of things that they wanted to go through somebody who's going to take care of their land, who's going to be respectful of their stuff, and get the product into a system of distribution like the food banking system. So we have a food bank farm. We're growing on about 20 acres of various farmland that farmers have given or we rent for a really good deal. And we grow about 200,000 pounds of food that way. That goes mostly with big corporate groups. Oh, here's the other thing, the other piece of the puzzle. We have the farmers. We also have who's going to pick all of this. Because we're talking, last year we picked 400,000 pounds of food. That's a lot of, and the slow, hard way. So come on, you're going to learn this summer when he takes over for Hope Link Harvest. That we have to get a lot of people involved in this. So when it comes to volunteers, we live within miles of big population areas. Maybe your farm or something is off the beaten track, but the closer you are to any kind of city, you're going to have a lot of corporate volunteers available. Everybody wants to get out of their cubicle. Now we live in a little bit of a influx with that because now people are working at home. They're out of their cubicle. But when they were in their cubicles, man, they'd do anything to get out of that thing for a day. And then when they got done, they'd go, "Where's my cubicle? I want to go back." So that was the moment. I was like, everybody wants their day on the farm. They don't want to own a farm, but they want their day on the farm. And then you have a few volunteers that are like, no, I want many days on the farm. I want to become a part of an elite crew of gleaners. So you have different tiers of people that are coming, getting involved. So at Foodbank Farm, we've got kind of a summer crop program that is in greenhouses where we're growing tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplants. And Hope Link Harvest and Ballard Food Bank have basically said, we'll take this. And so they do the planting, they do the trellising, and all the pruning. You got to get all the suckers off the tomatoes, and there's a lot of labor before you ever get a single tomato or cucumber. But then once the flood hits around 4th of July, everything is theirs. So now they moved from the pruning and tending and getting nothing to stuffing the sprinter vans full, like 3,000-4,000 pounds every week of produce. But then we have corporate, what I call corporate groups. That could be like a scout troop or a school group, or but lots of businesses also. And this is what butters my bread. If you work for Microsoft and you bring a group out to the farm or into the food bank or anything, they come along with a $25 an hour, I don't know what you call it, sort of volunteer wage that you get. And so that's how we pay for the land and pay for my salary. I'm technically half time at the church and half time at Foodbank Farm. So that half of my salary gets paid that way, and our gas and all of that kind of stuff. So we're a nonprofit. We do donation. Everything's by donation. We don't sell some and give some. We just give everything. Are you with me? How much time do I have left?
20 minutes.
We got 20 minutes. Okay. Yeah.
Just the thing you just said, corporate Microsoft group comes out and they bring 10 people. They pay $25 an hour per person.
Yeah. So how many did you say? 10 people? They stay for 4 hours. That's $100 a head. Makes good sense. So, basically I tell them, this is the Microsoft farm. You're growing this stuff. I'm doing the growing, but I can't buy the seeds. But we also have help from, like, Food Lifeline will buy some of our seeds. Hope Link Harvest has bought seeds and fertilizer and things like that. Food Link Harvest last year got about 50,000 pounds. Ballard got about 60,000 pounds. The next biggest one is my next door neighbor, Bob Rickey, at the Corn, Maize, and Pumpkin Farm. Now he grows about 40 acres of pumpkins. He grows 12 successions of sweet corn. And Bob is a terrible farmer because last year he planted 100,000 pounds too much sweet corn. That's how we sent 115,000 pounds of his corn into the food bank. So we joke about it. If you want to accidentally plant too much sweet corn again, I'll see what I can do to get it to the food bank. So Bob loves this setup. And anyway, he's a really generous neighbor to us. He also grows a big patch of winter squash that before the end of the season, he lets us go and glean the leftovers of that. I think we got about 20,000 pounds of winter squash and pie pumpkins. So then there's others in the valley that we go to Mountain View blueberries with Keith Stalker. Then I was talking to Keith Stalker and I said, well, don't you also have a pumpkin farm? I said, so we talked about maybe this year so now we're building on what happened. He watched us a few years going in the blueberries, not messing things up. And he's like, oh yeah, you can come in and you can pick the winter squash or the leftover pie pumpkins, things like that, the food bank likes. So we're talking with them about that. And then you talk to one guy that's got this, and then he said, don't you have a little apple orchard as well as, these agritourism things have several things you can pick in them. So I'm talking to Swan's Trails and Bailey's U-Pick and Bailey's Pumpkin Patch, and maybe some others. Oh, and then there was another farmer who's more like this one right here. It's Snow Valley Farms. They grow, they have a tractor that looks like a 2-story house. I mean, on wheels. It's just huge. He grows big organic barley for, commercial, I don't know, 1,500 acres or something like that. So he'll do a lot of things for us that aren't growing things, but like he'll plow for us, and he'll lay down fertilizer stripes for us to plant our crops in afterwards. So not all farmers are giving just by here's the crop. They're also throwing in by saying, well, I can do this part for you. I can plow for you. I can do this. And each of these, if we were just a custom, that would say, hey, can you come over and do this? Yeah, here's some money for you. Here's some money for you. It'd be $500, $500, $500 to do all of that. So these farmers are all happy to be part of it, and I think it's a matter of pride for them that they're seen in the community as being partners with this, because this doesn't exist anymore, where the people are just going to come out and get to the edge of their field and get the barley and make their own bread or something. So it's a way for them to fulfill what they know sort of in the back of their mind. I know this is a thing. Let's show a few pictures of what groups are doing at the farm. Okay, this is the first tomato out of the greenhouse. This with HopeLink Harvest. Rand Rashid is the manager of this program. She actually has her own farm at Chinook, and I just hired her as a subcontractor to run these hoop houses and so forth. So here's HopeLink cutting the first tomato in half or into pieces, and they're all celebrating. This is my other thing. I think everybody, groups coming out, obviously taking great delight at the harvest at the end of things. I like to see that on people's faces. Let's see another one. Here's cabbage harvest over at Harndon's Tree Nursery on the north side of the Snohomish River. We try to grow all the way into like January. So this was like a January harvest of cabbage on a rare, nice day in January. Here's sweet corn picking, and here's Megan with HopeLink Harvest, and they're tending the tomato vines. They're all learning how to prune them and take the suckers off and get them trellised on the Rand is teaching them. This is one of our early on harvests of carnival acorn squash. I loved it once. I saw some church or some newsletter from a food bank, and they're I said, that's a very conspicuous looking squash. That's my carnival squash. Then this is the one of the cabbage harvests over at Harndon's also, and this guy's his name is Jumichi Suni, I think. Anyway, he's some sort of an ambassador kind of person with Japan. Anyway, he came out and did the harvest, and he took a lot of selfies and so forth. Last year, when we had, did you do like a conference last year here somehow? Also, we had a thing here with a bunch of farmers. Anyway, you see these giant cabbages. These are like 10-pounders, and people were having a question and answer with somebody like, "What if we don't get what we want when we ask at the food bank to give us produce?" And she said, "Well." The food bank was sort of saying, "What did you want?" And they said, "Well, we wanted this, but all you did was send us this bin of giant cabbages." So sometimes, like, I don't know anything about that. Yeah. Yes. Now this is the high tunnel thing again. We grew the peppers. We're starting the cucumbers, and they're learning how to trellis the tomatoes. And the first cucumber. And then now that here we are towards the end of the season, this is a big, this thing is, the springs are straight on the bottom of this sprinter van. That is way overloaded. This is Ballard Food Bank. And now I also like push capacity on some of these organizations. They say, well, this is the biggest truck we have. I said, really? Well, we have a box truck, but we don't have a forklift on the other end of things to get things off the box truck. Well, they have these manual forklifts. It's just like a pallet jack, only it's got a little mast to it and can lift out of the back of the truck. So during the pandemic, during the flood this year, I needed one of those to empty out a container at the farm that went underwater. So I managed to find a really good one for like $400 on the internet. We used it to empty our container, and then I gave it to Ballard Foodbank. So now they have a forklift at the other end of things, and they can bring their box truck out, and the box truck can hold, twice as much as this easily. So I'm hoping for some increased capacity. Now this is a combination of starting to get Bob's corn, and then also them picking all the other things that are, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, and the peppers, and maybe now they're starting to get bok choy and things like that. Again, just learning how to trellis tomatoes. You'd think it's a hard skill. It's like that Sesame Street thing. One of these things is not like the other. It's called a sucker, and you want to get the suckers out. But people will top the plant and stop it from growing at that point, and you're like, you're fired. Anyway, learning how to get the suckers off and get the plants growing. Now they're really putting out here. Granadero, it's a really good Roma tomato. And I think this is repeat, corn. And here's the other thing. We went to live loads for harvest. So the Food Lifeline truck will park in the morning. Food Lifeline handles all the bins, does all of the shipping. So this is a third partner, is the logistics. How do you get this from the field to the food bank? A few years ago, all we had was like cardboard, what do they call those things? Gaylords on pallets, and it's not always sunny when you're harvesting. So then I had the boss of Food Lifeline out. We had a bunch of third graders picking in the driving rain, and our cardboard Gaylords were just starting to go like this. And I said, this is why we need plastic. And the next year we got 175 plastic bins. I mean, we didn't. I mean, Food Lifeline got them. So the people pick. They get it into the bin. They see it going into the back of the truck, and it's like, move that bus. At the end, they all take their picture in front of it, and they really see very tangibly, there's what I picked. It's going super fresh into the back of that truck, and that truck is going straight down to Tukwila, and from there it's going to be distributed. Actually, when we do sweet corn, I think the sweet corn gets distributed fresher than the sweet corn you get in the grocery store. So I'm all about top shelf, fresh stuff. And because we're growing it and we're planning ahead, everything is done on a schedule. You can raise a big crew of people to come out. Let's see, any other things in there? That's it. A couple of people, a couple of pictures of people standing in front of the truck with their moment of glory. So yeah, let's do some Q&A.
Jim, I want to introduce you to Gerald Thompson from Jardín de Milagros in New Mexico, who has a very similar program to you. So I want to let you know that you're not alone.
Yes.
And he has a farm, I think it's 5 acres, and he gets about 100,000 pounds worth of produce out of his farm, and then gleans at neighboring farms another 90,000 pounds. So let me make that introduction. Have a friend.
Thank you. Yes, and I've made friends with a few people around the country because of the social media and so forth. The guy over is in Maryland, I guess. First Fruits Farm, Rick Berenstein, like Berenstein Bears. I'm friends with him. There's a Lutheran outfit in Ohio, I think, called, or maybe in Pennsylvania, called I Heart Harvest. There are other people doing this. Other question? And we get a lot of ideas from each other. As pertains to the things that you are doing, you're like, well, what about that? Did you have a question as we're going through? How does that work? Yeah.
Sorry, we're recording this for. So my question is, what do you do with the tier 2 and tier 3
produce.
I don't know what that means.
It means the stuff that I can't just turn around and give right back out. So it has some blemishes, some insect damage. Maybe it's got some rot on it. Does that stay in the garden, or
Yes.
is that all harvested?
All right. So one of the things I think about is it's really not waste when it's in the field. If something's got a mold spot on it and it's doomed, that's just going to get plowed back into the ground. That's like cover crop or compost. So it's after you get food into an industrial situation like a warehouse and a refrigerator that it's now a problem to get rid of or to handle if it's got rot. Well, we better get this cooked first because it's going to just go if we don't do something with it, or frozen first or something. But when it's in the field, it's just nature. It's just biomass for to get plowed under if it doesn't get harvested. The tier 2 is what you mean, like ugly vegetables. Well, that's fine. I think we send all the ugly vegetables in too. We don't grade anything. We don't high grade what we're picking. Yeah, but a lot of times people will pick something that's going to rot too quick, and I'll throw it out of the bin right as we're going. But it's all moving pretty quickly at that moment.
Jim, how do you initiate these conversations? You kind of talked a little bit about it briefly, but how do you initiate conversations with commercial farms? Like, what does that process look like for you?
I will just see a farm that's growing something, and I'll drive over there and get out of my car and say who's, and I'll take the dog bite if I have to. I mean, like I say, I like farmers. I'm pretty sure they're going to like me when we start talking. I also talk to them at like trade shows and things. There's a focus on farming up at the Monroe Fairgrounds every year. But anytime I bump into a farmer, I'm like a person that's like a salesman. I mean, in other circumstances, I'm extremely shy. But when I'm talking to a farmer, I'm like, oh, let's geek out. And the next thing we're starting a little collaboration on something. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you get the mic. Yeah.
So with these farms that you're gleaning from, are you typically the only gleaners who come in, or are there other?
Yes, I'm kind of an all or nothing guy. So
Okay,
I go in there, I say, we'll get it all.
Okay, gotcha.
And most of the time, well, so this is one of the reasons we do growing and gleaning, because sometimes you have too many people, and you don't want to have make work, which people figure out right away. This is just make work. You want them working really hard. There's a certain part in a curve where everybody's working very hard. Usually, if the group's a little bit too small, everybody goes, well, it's up to me. I've got to do this. If it's way too small, it's like, you're crazy. I'm not doing this. This is overwhelming. And if it's too many people, then they're all bumping into each other, and people are starting to goof around in the field and things. So, and also, it's a model based on inefficiency. Like more people, I want more. So the second product of gleaning is what's happening in these people's hearts. They come and look at those faces. They're proud of what they did. They're excited about what they did. She's wearing a corn shirt. I'm saying they come out and they are all in. They really are high-fiving by the time they're done. And that's my thing where I said, I believe everybody wants their day on the farm. They don't want to own the farm, but they want their day on the farm. So this is really a kind of agritourism experience. Did I answer the question directly, or? Yeah, okay. I got on a little sidebar. Okay, we've got 4 minutes. Christ the King.
Yes, we do fun things too. My question is, so where do you all get volunteers from other than, it sounds like HopeLink does some stuff and you do corporate, but like where are all these people from?
Oh yeah, well, so at this point I've been on the phone with people since 2012, and the best thing I can see is when a group comes back again the next year. So the first years I did this, I've followed up a lot with surveys, phone calls. How did that go? Is everybody happy? What could be better, and things like that. I was constantly folding in, both from the food bank. Like for example, we changed what we're going to grow because the food bank said this, it's hard for people to carry big things up to the bus in a bag. So, you can grow big squash, but then you've got 10 pounds and your toddler on the other side, and you're trying to get to the bus, and it's not fun. So we grew smaller squash that are easier for people to handle. The 10-pound cabbages were an exception. So we're constantly checking, asking, what do you want? What do you want? So we discovered a few years ago that HopeLink was the first one to start me. They said, we got a lot of Russian people around here. Do you grow beets? I'm like, easy. So we grew beets, and they just flew off the shelf here. Everybody knew all the Slavic people knew what to do with beets. Yeah. So we just keep folding it back and trying to get the people to come back again. 2 minutes, maybe less.
Aspect of connecting with food banks and being a farmer and making those connections?
There always seems to be, like you're doing AmeriCorps Vista, people who are sort of in paid internships throughout the year. I've had people that did like college credit internships with me, and my wheelhouse for volunteers for the week in week out volunteers, the newly retired person. You want to get them before they get called in, before they start working for HopeLink instead. I mean, I just get them. I try to. Oh, you're retiring? Oh, well, I got a deal for you. How would you like to drive a tractor? We call them our emotional support tractors. And person gets on a tractor the first time, they're like, is that it? I think we're about it. Are we on? Whatever is our time like? 50 seconds.
Actually, I think, Jim, in answer to that question, that's exactly why we're all here today, right? Is to learn from one another. Hear the presentations about the amazing amount of knowledge and the work that you've done.
Yeah.
And be able to figure out a way that we can share that and be collaborative, because everybody in this room is doing some pretty amazing work. So I think the Gleaning Network is a really good first step in helping to do that.
I have a student who's in a dietitian program that's going to do a 1-year internship with the farm as part of we have a contract and everything. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, like 5 minutes, we're gonna get set up and introduce you.